From beyond the farthest reaches of our galaxy they come. Two brains pulsing with a strange energy. These space brains come to share their love of science fiction movies.
Hi, and welcome to Space Brains, the show where we joy-watch sci-fi movies and then talk about what was good and what was great. I'm Surrey, and this is Mark.
Hiya, Surrey, and everyone that's out there listening. Tonight we are talking about District 9. It came out in 2009. And again, like our last episode, Brother from Another Planet, we got to watch this thanks to the Little Planet Science Fiction Festival. Which is something that's put together by Sean David Burke. It was our second year that we were invited to this great little informative, cute, community-styled science fiction festival. I love it. It's a good fun. And yeah, I was really happy to be invited back. I mean, that we were obviously good guests the first time. Sorry.
It was great. How many other times do you get to watch movies with a bunch of people in beanbags while eating apple crumble?
I don't know. It's a good combination. The food, the people, the movies. I like it. District 9 was directed by Neill Blomkamp, I believe is how you say his name, in his feature film debut. And it was also written by himself and Terry Tatchell. It was based on a short film that Neill had created previously. And of course it was, which a lot of people know, this was kind of handpicked by Peter Jackson. And I know he put his own money and backing behind this idea.
Well, Peter Jackson wanted Neill to do another movie originally.
Yeah.
Now, of course, the name of that slips me.
Sure.
But Peter had basically said, hey, Neill, you're really cool.
Yeah, I like
I'm going to get you this movie. And then the studio pulled out and said, no, I don't really want to. So Peter Jackson went, oh, that's okay. Let's just do this other one, which was District 9.
Yes.
And I'll bankroll it because I'm suddenly very successful, Mr.
Yes. Of course, we're talking about the one and only Peter Jackson, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, etc. And his producing partner as well, Caroline Cunningham, who has basically produced a huge amount of those Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, was a Lovely Bones, a lot of those Peter Jackson films. So yeah, it's pretty cool to be given a little tap on the shoulder if you're a up-and-coming filmmaker by Peter Jackson. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, and you got access to great science fiction special effects.
Yeah, through Jackson's Weta company, which is a special effects company, well known now, all behind the Lord of the Rings films and based there in New Zealand.
So turn back now if you haven't seen this film and go watch it. It's really well worth it because this is your spoiler warning. Warning. Yes.
Double warning.
We're going to talk all about it.
We are. And let's start with a little quick synopsis. Basically, District 9, it starts with an alien spaceship which breaks down above Johannesburg, or Jayburg as they like to call it. And when humans open up the spaceship, there's these prawn-like alien creatures that don't seem very intelligent. And the humans decide to ferry them down and create like a home for them, which is very camp-styled. And it's pretty obvious, even as an outsider to South African culture like myself, that there's kind of a bit of a nod to the slums and the apartheid situation straight away. But the film goes off from there, and it kind of, over the years that this District 9 exists, things break down into gangs, violence, drugs, bestiality, I think. Is that what you would call it with aliens? Yeah, I think so.
Zeniality? Yeah. Xenosexuality?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Of course, the local South Africans are not happy. There's riots. There's kind of disputes. And we get to a point where the government decides to shift them out to a nicer new tent city much further away from Joburg.
Many miles away.
Many miles away. And again, nod to kind of racist acts like this, maybe like the Holocaust or something, where we shift people off to the middle of nowhere so they're out of mind, out of sight. That's basically the premise of the story.
Or like maybe an island encampment where doctors aren't allowed to talk about what's going on there and they don't have access to lawyers and stuff, you know?
I don't know what you're talking about. What country are you talking about doing that?
I don't know.
I know nothing about it.
Legally, I'm not allowed to talk about it, so...
Yes, that's what we've done here in Australia. Well, just one of the things we've done here in Australia to do that's similar to this. But this is an Australian story here, okay? Come on. Yeah. So when the multinational company are sent in to shift the camp residents, the aliens, off to another part of South Africa, we have this key character called Wikus, and he's overseeing this shift of the prawns, as they like to call them, to this, further outfielded tent city. He discovers the power of an alien technology, sprays it all over himself, and then starts to become very much like a prawn, and then therefore is hunted by the multinational company.
Yes, indeed.
And that's all I'll say at that
Maybe
point.
he's like a scampi or something.
He might be. So we'll get into some more details about that. So the premise of this film is, I found it a bit hard to put down in words, you know, and it was, I hope you've come up with a really cray-cray...
Oh, look, I've got an alternative tagline.
Alternative tagline. We'll come back to that maybe, or do you want to go for it?
No, let's go my number one takeaway, because it's important to do that one before my tagline.
What is your number one takeaway?
My number one takeaway from District 9 is that aliens, like humans, consist of a great number of slobs and a small selection of hard-working computer specialists.
Very, very astute there.
Some might say biased.
I was going to say very biased. Extremely biased.
You're calling me biased.
I am.
You know, I am doing the best. The very best I can do for you. Got your cat food and everything.
I know. Where's my cat food? I get paid nothing around here. I wouldn't mind getting paid in cat food.
Okay, so how about you? Is this hope, warning, or an experiment?
It is an experiment, I would say, because it's literally a symbolic fable tale of what we do as the human race. Like you were just implying, here in Australia, we have an island that we detain refugees at, and the media are not allowed there, and the doctors aren't allowed to speak out. This film is giving nod to the apartheid. It's also giving nod to kind of that, that
Guantanamo Bay,
the Holocaust, and just really any race-related wars, or the way we do treat refugees in that way of you're an outsider, so we hunt you and treat you with such disdain.
Well, they use the same language of, they bring their problems here, they do this, they do that. You kind of, I don't know. As if we didn't have problems anyway, like the same ones.
And exactly right. Right, and it's a really clever story, this one, because I feel like it's almost like an old Brothers Grimm tale, in that, and it's in the modern era.
Or maybe Freaky Friday.
Maybe Freaky Friday. Maybe, I was just
when Lindsay Lohan pops the champagne and gets sprayed in the face, and then she's like unconscious in the gutter. And poor Lindsay, she had a hard time.
Is that Wikus here?
Yes, he went.
Same problem. Another day.
Yeah.
So I just feel like it's such a clever modern day fable in a way. It's so obvious the symbolism, but then the story holds its own.
Yeah, you don't get a really strong preaching vibe here, because they're not telling us what we should do.
No.
They're just sort of presenting, okay, here it is the way it sort of is, and here's how it might play out with like outer space aliens, not international aliens.
Not just another race from another country that's seeking.
Because it's even easier, I think, to dehumanize things that aren't human. Because on one hand, you get some refugees coming into your country, escaping from a bad regime or warfare or whatever. There's going to be a lot of sympathy for that.
Yeah.
Even there will be fear and concern, but there'll also be a lot of sympathy. But when you're talking here, we've got the real aliens, like that. They don't look human. They've got these extra little funny arm thingos, and they have clicky mouth parts, and they're exoskeletonous, and they clearly don't behave in the same way. You know, they don't walk, they don't move, they don't talk or smell or look like humans at all.
And it's funny because it's like they're physically stronger, but maybe not as clever. But then again, you also wonder, and the film doesn't answer this, it's like, did they just surrender to us because they needed help? Like, is that what they needed?
Yeah,
and they would have been more friendly. Whereas
it's sort of indicated.
away, and again, this is a connotation to stuff that's happened in our history as a human race. That, you know, instead of reaching a helping hand to a fellow man, you're like, oh, hey, you're different, bang bang.
Well, it's always that case. You treat a person like an animal, they behave like an animal.
That's right, yeah.
And that's been seen all the time. You get these, and it's used then as a self-fulfilling prophecy where people would look at slums and say, oh, all they know is, you know, violence and crime. That's their way of life. And you think, well, they're humans, or in this case, they're intelligent creatures that lived and work with technology, advanced technology. They're not idiots. You know, they are clearly sentient, capable of speech and thought.
Yeah.
You know, they've built these little shanty shacks and things. So that they're not animals, and even if they were, they'd probably get treated better if they were animals. In fact, so it is. Yeah, I think very much an experiment in that case. You could sort of start saying it's like a bit of hope, but it's not really, is it? Because
I don't think so.
Humanity doesn't learn or grow from this.
No.
You could say Wikus does.
Yeah, he does.
But he's kind of forced into it. He doesn't get that choice.
No. Not until the very end. You know,
Right at the end.
Finally makes that decision at the end. That's the right decision, you know. So, I mean, this is, I feel it's an experiment. If you think about it, it's holding a mirror up to ourselves and the way we do treat refugees, immigrants, or race relations, you know, at the war level, you know, in many, many countries. And there's not one single, you know, part of the human race that hasn't sort of done this. Certain races have definitely done it worse than others, but we've all done it and we're all guilty of it. So it's a good film showing us a mirror onto ourselves. And the myth part, or the symbol part, is, well, they're aliens, you know, and instead of being a different type of human or whatever. Was this the first time you'd seen District 9, sorry?
No, I think this is my third or fourth time.
Yeah. And what was it like? Do you remember what it was like when you first saw it?
Yes, a few things. One, it's quite gross, this film. Like, it's very visceral, it's sweaty, it's grimy, the slums, it's all filmed in this sort of hard, light, digital, high definition, because it is partially a documentary style, or there's some found footage type stuff going on. And yeah, I remember feeling, you know, the only way I would have been able to feel a bit more greasy and yucky was if Bruce Willis was in it. Yeah. That's because that's Bruce Willis's trademark, is the unwashed, possibly hungover. You know,
yeah, I mean that's what he does, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what he does. Is Die Hard, The Last Boy Scout.
Yeah,
even Surrogates that we watched. It always ends up in that sort of style, doesn't it?
At some point that he's hungover or whatever. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Now in hindsight, you look at Neill Blomkamp, he obviously has this vibe because it's happened in his other films, Chappie and Elysium, and this one are sort of the ones I've seen of his. And the trailer's dropped. It's based on a video game. His latest one's coming out. It's just skipped my mind the name, but you know, like, there's this kind of like the weaponry, the setting, the characters are kind of they're all a bit rough, aren't they? They're all like, there is a roughness to it that's there, isn't it? Anthem, that's the one. That's the one that's coming out.
I can't believe Wikipedia doesn't have his upcoming.
Yeah, no, it's there on Anthem.
Oh, Anthem.
Yeah, Anthem.
Conviction.
Oh, it was 2019. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. It's more like robot-y things.
Yeah. So it is an actual game. It's not a movie, but he's behind it, right?
Oh, well, as soon as I get my next gaming PC, after I built my house, I'll be getting a hold of that.
But you can really see these in his films, a bit of a theme going on. Like, everything's a bit, I don't want to say half-assed, but it's all like, it's rough, isn't it? It's all, it's crude. There's bits missing. There's bits added on. It's kind of, it's not all like to perfection, you know.
No.
And so in this film, in District 9, it's more the aliens that are half perfect and their technology's all a bit rugged and rough and it crosses the boundaries, probably versus the multinational company that are more, slick and sophisticated. And even like you're saying, like greasy and grimy and feeling sick, like Wikus, as he changes, it's all kind of, veins are popping out.
Oh, he looks gross, isn't he?
The prawny alien bit comes through bits when and even before that, when he goes to the birthday, he vomits all over the birthday cake.
And squishes it down, and then tries to scoop it up.
And he's so sick, I always love in films when a key character is so, like that sick, it's so uncomfortable, isn't it?
It reminds me of how I met my wife.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, there you go. Little secret story you'll have to tell us later.
Birthday cake. We had birthday cake.
Vomit in the birthday cake and you ate it?
No vomiting birthday cake.
For me, this is my third or fourth time. I remember watching this the first time and it kind of, the trickery of it being a mockumentary, documentary style mixed in with these really clever special effects. It was very much like, oh wow, what the hell am I watching? It really manipulated me to just straight off go, that's an amazing film. It blows your socks off that first time. And I went back, I actually screened it with some of my students a couple of times, and watching it sort of second, third, fourth time, especially in that analytical environment, it started to feel like, well, hang on, halfway through it drops away the dropped footage and starts becoming more fictional. And I kind of started to think, oh, well, is that problematic? Has he not sort of stayed with the style enough? Because it kind of comes back around at parts as you head into that final act. But really in the final act, there's a lot of the fight scene and all that happens. We see it, but earlier in the film, we only saw stuff through found footage or newsreels or interviews. So it kind of became like, hang on, why is it now? How are we now there? Because that's always the question.
I found
I just want to say the final little bit there is, but when we watched it this time, I kind of felt like the vibe of it all, because it has been a few years now since I've seen it. I felt like the vibe that he was going for, it's always about the vibe that he was going for carries through the whole film. So it kind of, I don't know, I was more forgiving, I think, now watching it again. So it was like, first time I watched it, blown away. Second, third, fourth time going, oh, okay, well, hang on. But then now this time I was just like, no, I get it. I get the I don't want to say humour, but the tone, that's the word.
Yeah.
The tone of it stays consistent throughout, even though the style kind of changes a bit.
Well, I found the interesting point is it's hard to determine at what point it stopped being, because it starts off very much like interviews. You don't know it at the time, but they're interviews after the event.
Yeah, they are.
After the whole movie, we've got these bits, and we're sort of getting a reconstruction of this, it's like the story so far.
Yeah.
But it's really hard when you're just watching the film to find what point does it stop being that and start being a traditional multi-camera sort of arrangement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And with different shots and like I said, it stops being a literal camera and starts just being a view to the world. And it's hard to pick the point where it crosses over. I mean, it must obviously happen after he gets sprayed and he heads on home. But yeah, I thought it was quite well blended, because it's a difficult thing. Sometimes movies, they try to stay 100% found footage, and some go, try to incorporate some bits of stock footage type thing. It is. I think it would be quite a hard thing to do, and it's hard to pick the point at which it slips over.
The one problem you've got with found footage is if you try to do it for the whole story, like really try to just do it the whole time, that means that's the only camera angle you've got, and for a film that's really hard, because and it also means you can never. For example, if the good guy's on the run and that's where the camera is, if it was a GoPro attached to his shoulder or whatever, right? You can never then see what the bad guys are up to, because you just can't. Because how could you? Because they would also need a camera that you've also got access to that footage, So that's why the Blair Witch was so clever in that three filmmakers, they've got a camera on each other.
Yes.
And so you can actually cut from one camera to the next.
And that's where I've seen it done. There's an Australian film it's a horror film called The Tunnel?
Yeah.
Which is set in an abandoned tunnel in Sydney, like train tunnel that was, I don't know, World War II, and then it was turned into a bunker, and then it was like never connected
Convoluted up.
never connected to the rest of the line, and it's sort of partially filled with water.
Yeah.
It's quite a spooky sort of place, basically. And in that, it was a news crew, so they had one main camera, but then they had someone with like a handycam doing. They were checking shots and scenes and things like that, sort of filming bits, going, looking around, and they'd stop and go, okay, set the camera up here. This will be a good spot for the set piece where we're going to have a talk to the camera. So you did get the two bits, and at some point, of course, the handycam had the infrared, night vision. So when all the lights went out, this is the only way they could see, which of course meant that the monster coming in, you could only see its glowing eyes, and barely figure out what it looked like and things, which is a great effect.
Yeah.
So, sorry, what was your log line?
There we go.
The alternate. How else might one describe this film? District 9. A software engineer must deal with an obnoxious government bureaucrat so he can finally finish his work and go home.
Is he a software engineer?
In my mind, he is.
I don't think he is he?
Well, all the rest of the slobs, and he's a computer specialist, so it must be a software engineer.
Yeah.
So you can see where I was going with this.
Okay.
Yesterday, I spent a long time in traffic, and I just wanted to go home.
Yes.
And so I felt a bit like
I
felt a bit like that alien. I felt like a I really felt like a refugee here. Like, I think I know what they were going through. My air conditioning had to blast so hard to keep me cool because it was so hot outside, and I just finished off the last of my drink, and I still had another 20 minutes to go before I got home. It was hard.
Very hard.
No, but in all seriousness, it did take me 2.5 hours to get home, which is a very long time.
Is a very long time when you're just talking about going through the suburbs.
After being in IKEA. So there you go. We all know that.
First world problems there.
Very first world. Probably 0.5 world. I mean, yes, well, okay, so that's nice. And tell me, Mark, though, what's some science fiction that really got your brain going on this little...
I loved the alien weaponry in this. I reckon it was pretty cool. Sort of mentioned before, the roughage of it, but didn't talk about how the aliens' weaponry only worked for the aliens because it was kind of like biologically attached to them. You had to have the biology of the prawn. And that's why it's then such a great payoff that Wikus, as he's transforming, can fire the weapon.
Wasn't that the really clever bit about it? I was thinking about this.
Like, it's such a great idea.
He gets the bit of a viewpoint of, the discrimination. But then it turns out, okay, this pushes the plot forward because now he can operate the weaponry, which becomes of particular interest because the government has not been able, this private body, no one has been able to operate it.
Yeah.
He can, and they get a hold of him, and you add on to that, now he can help the other alien do his thing. It all continues to pull the whole thing through. It wasn't just convenience.
It wasn't just a show-off thing. It was actually...
It all flowed through very nicely. It's very strong.
You notice that like the humans realizing that he can do it. We have that quite a long scene of him trying to they're testing all those things, and he shoots a pig, and then he wants to shoot a prawn, and he's like screaming, "Don't do it!" And the scientist is like, "Right, I'm going to zap you to make you fire." It's like quite a painful long scene, isn't it?
And he's looking sweaty and wobbly,
and he's only half a human, half a prawn, and it's funny because he kind of doesn't want to do it anymore, and they're doing it, and then at the end of all, they're like, "Oh, it's the first time this has happened. We're going to have to take every inch of his body and dissect it." And the multinational corporation guys are just like, "Yeah, just do it." So,
okay.
It's worth billions of dollars, sure. I just love that. And then the irony is that then later in the film, he can then help the prawns actually escape. And they don't want the same thing from him, right? So it's like humans are bad, prawns are good. And I'd say the same. I wouldn't want to put you on a barbecue and eat you.
No.
Prawns, yeah. Even though prawns are covered in a lot of sulfites, unfortunately. It sort of sucks.
I had prawns tonight, actually.
Did you?
Yeah, they're delicious.
You'll have the sulfites problem.
Not a problem for me. It's a problem for other people.
Problem for me, unfortunately. But no, I really haven't had prawns since I found out. What was your favourite scene, sorry? Apart from prawns on the barbie.
Oh, there's so many favourite scenes here, but the rule is we have to kind of pick one.
Yeah, you have to pick one, come on.
The final fight
I do want to go home at some point.
The final fight scene. It's a great payoff. As you said, there's all the discrimination set up at the start, and then the running and fleeing in the middle where people are trying to get him. And then towards the end, we get this payoff where everyone's trying to stop this engineer from returning to the ship.
Yeah.
For different reasons, but mainly to get the technology, and also out of fear that, like, they see him heading up to the ship and they go, don't let him get up there.
Don't let him go up there.
Probably because they're feeling a bit guilty. They're going, well, hang on, if he can get up there and control that ship, what's he going to do to us?
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, well, maybe you should have treated them better to start with.
Oh, crap. He might be able to annihilate.
Yeah, okay. So, but all of that is sort of builds up this tension, and then Wikus gets a hold of some of the weapons, and in that armoured suit.
Yeah.
And there's just this
so cool.
really cool fight scene that they shoots the RPG at the ship, and he catches the rocket, but it blows up and damages his arm, and he's shooting stuff and keeps blowing people away and gets damaged. It's wonderful. And as you said, it's jacked into his head,
so
sort of thing.
He feels pain when it does
and
blow up.
He's struggling and working hard on these things. Not like Iron Man, who's just kind of calmly and sedately in his little armor suit. It was just a wonderful action sequence that sort of sprawled through a junkyard with, what were they, Nigerian gangsters being blown up, mercenaries from the MUN or the MNU, multinational unity or whatever it is. It was just fantastic that it felt really effective. It reminded me of the Aliens, big fight scene towards the end there, where there's like everything felt effective.
Yeah.
And I hate these fight scenes that are like, I always liken them to the A-Team.
Yeah.
If you remember, this is going back to the 80s, the A-Team.
A-Team.
And it happens in a lot of shows going forward, which are PG.
Yeah.
They would build, a tank out of a, trash can and a helicopter engine or something stupid, and they'd rumble on into the bad guys, and there'd be machine guns, brrr, but it would just like blow up little bits of the ground and make sparks on things.
No one gets hit.
They would all end up then in a fist fight.
Yeah.
Bureaucrats would pick someone up and chuck them over, and it just felt so ineffectual. Like I always felt like, oh. Same with He-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all that same time period where these people have lethal weaponry, but they don't use them.
Right.
He-Man would deflect a boulder and smash a tree or something, and you're like, why do you have a huge sword if you're not going to use it?
You're never going to use it.
Yeah. But this movie delivers. He has these guns which explode people, and he does. He explodes multiple people, and it's just blood spray. Like they just become a mist of blood.
Yes.
And you feel, you take joy in their death, which is a terrible thing to say, of course. But it is that payoff because you've had that build up, and then you have this release of explosions and shooting, and it's all effective, And the people fighting back, they do manage to blow off a hand, and you can really tell that, his armor suit is quite powerful, but it's weakening. It's going down, and he's getting damaged. He's feeling it. He's struggling. So it's a great sort of balancing act there, which finally pays off with the near death and. So that really, I just loved it. It was great for that reason.
It's great that in a couple of things that you're exactly right that each beat, like each problem that he's faced with in that action sequence. So it's like, but you're going to turn me back. You're going to turn me back. It's going to take 3 years. So he has to make a decision. No, screw you. I'm going to take off on the ship myself. Punches Christopher the Prawn out, which is ridiculously stupid in a way, but he's making that as his executive decision. Meanwhile, the multinationals are kind of like hounding down and starting, but he takes off in the mothership, more powerful than anything else, but he can't freaking fly it, can he? So he just basically crash lands it, which is worse now. And then he's hurt Christopher, the multinationals on his tail. So they go to the Nigerians. The Nigerians tackle him and pull him up, but then the multinationals, the Nigerians have to have a fight. And then, just when he's going to get to that point where that sadistic Nigerian's going to eat him or something, eat his arm and chop it off, the biological alien suit comes alive. So he gets involved in that. And then it's like, okay, well now he's got power again. It kept it's that real toing and throwing, isn't it?
And he'd blow away some people, and then he'd catch the missile and blow his hand off, and then someone would shoot a machine gun to his back and it would hit something which would start sparking. He'd limp and have to use one arm to crawl. It's great.
Yeah, so it's just such a great example of like escalating constantly, like making a decision. It's not the best decision in the moment, but then like escalates the drama in another way. Yeah, but that suit as well. I mean, how much of a homage to the alien? We all love those aliens.
Yeah, there's a power loader, but it's also a bit of a Japanese sort of manga anime sort of power suit thing. That's I guess Pacific Rim took that to the the Power Rangers sort of level. Yeah, it's and everyone does. Everyone loves a bit of a power suit that does stuff.
Avatar did it.
Yeah, they had the things. The Matrix had these sort of lumpy things.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? I mean, but we all love that because it's kind of like making a human much bigger.
Yes, and louder. We do like loud humans.
Are you doing anything science fiction related or narrative story? You've been telling us about your TV series that Netflix is picking up.
Yeah, Netflix is going to pick it up probably next year, the end of this year, maybe next year. Okay. But I've started watching The Mandalorian because apparently I have to. That's a great little sci-fi Western movie. Very much a Western series. I don't know. Have you seen it?
No.
Okay.
Well, I don't have access to Disney. So.
It's a Western film series, but with space. It's great. What else? So my writing group, which I don't think I've told anyone who's listening, but I'm starting a writing group down here in Mandurah because it's always fun to write with other people. That's going to come along. I'm waiting till school holidays are over because it's hard to get everyone organised when they're all looking after kids and trying to get them off, sorted out. Like we've got Elliot's been going to golf camp now, my little son. The other week, my daughter was going to surfing camp, sort of thing. And I've been doing kitchen building camp, which has just been horrendous. So yeah, it'll be the school holidays going to end, and then we'll get this. So every other week we record a bit of Space Brains. The off weeks, I'll be heading over probably to the local library.
Yep.
They'll probably sponsor this sort of thing, and hopefully find some dynamic and exciting Mandurah peeps to write with and to talk about writing. So that'll be any sort of writing. I'm not going to say it has to be science fiction. It could be screenplays. It could be poetry. It could be journals, letters, master's thesis, whatever.
Yeah, sounds
good. Ode to the mullet. We are in Mandurah.
You've got to make sure you advertise in that Mandurah Film Network group.
Because there's a number of writers in there who are keen to go. Yeah, so that's where we're moving to. Got to get more creativity, get going, and see where we end up with that.
Yeah.
Yes, and yourself, what have you been up to?
Well, it was good today. Got announced another festival for the memory, which is cool. So that's very exciting. So I think that's 5 that's been selected in, plus 1 award, and about 8 or 9 no's out of the total of 20 entries. So
a few film festivals.
Not too bad. And they're the festivals that I felt were appropriate for the memory. We've talked about this before, being a psychological thriller, adult themes and stuff. There is definitely a lot of festivals that are, families in a park. Then this isn't the type of movie for them. But that's really been a great learning experience.
Unless maybe the Manson family?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, So I did go to the Manson family picnic, so that we'll find out about that in the next couple of months. But yeah, they were, there is some, like Monster Fest, there is some festivals out there, they do focus on, the darker themes or more adult themes. But even a couple of them that I thought on paper looked good, but then, you go to their website and they're like, oh, this happens on a Sunday in Bondi on the beach with families. You're like, oh, well, no, they're not going to pick my film. So there was films that said, but the great thing was I've learned a lot about festivals, and if you want to play that game, what type of film probably is more tailored for it. So maybe a good family comedy sci-fi film is more the way to go, and then that way it's just open to all festivals. And then also the other side, because we've been talking about Space Brains having some sort of festival coming soon, like as kind of, we're in the beginning stages of that. I've also sort of learnt, I think, some of the things at festivals are doing good and maybe not so good, and also how they're communicating and what they offer, being someone on the other side, which is entering your film, and how they kind of communicate to you and deal with you and even notify you and all those kind of things. So yeah, I feel like it's been a huge learning curve. That's one thing. Last episode talking about, moving into my next short film. Haven't made much progress since last week, but that's in progress, and a little bit like you because of school holidays. But then I also, and I don't know if you saw on social media, but I've come up with a brand new beat board for my office, and I've sort of filled out some of the things from Blake Schneider, Save the Cat, and also Robert McKee's story, and kind of just, and the great thing is, so I think I did that where are we, Monday? I think I did that Friday, and the excellent thing is each day, I've walked into the office, and then obviously all this week I'm going to be in there working my actual day job working, but it's like I'm staring at it, and it's actually getting me going, oh, okay, what am I going to do? So, but my next one is pretty much already locked in, which is a horror film, and it's about crocodiles. So crocodiles. It's one that if you remember, where are we, 2019, late 2019, I spoke to the guy at NBC Australia.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of the ones, and I got feedback, and so I've already planned from that feedback and modified what I thought would be better from having that great conversation with that guy. And I think that was only a year ago, pre-COVID. It's a different world. But yeah, I'm thinking that will be mapped out on that beat board pretty soon. Again, it's probably once the kids go back to school in 2 weeks, but will be the start of it. But it's great having that beat board up, actually, because it's reminding me of what you have to put where, and just kind of getting the juices flowing.
Yeah, that is a good idea.
Yeah.
Of course, when I was a teenager, I had a beat sock, but we won't talk about that.
No, I don't want to talk about your beat sock.
and that killed the conversation.
That totally did. It would just be like this. We'll talk about this, how with Wikus, he's on the run from MU, and suddenly the news headlines are that he's got STDs from...
Oh, he's probably been having sex with
copulating with the aliens.
No, I did not have sex with them!
Everyone's like, ah!
I wasn't!
Isn't that such a great way of just slandering anyone? If anyone was on the run, these people on the run, where the police are looking for this person, if they really wanted, if that's what they just could say.
Yes, there's a man in the run in the Australian outback.
Yeah.
He's accused of having sex with a koala.
Yeah. You'd be like, okay.
He got chlamydia from the koala, because we all know koalas have chlamydia.
We do. I don't know, can they pass on chlamydia?
He was looking sideways at a wombat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and then you'd be like, oh, and he says, no, it was not me, I did not do that.
Because if
yes, I did actually. What?
You know those most wanted posters, like
yes.
Murderer, right? Like, it's like Murderer, yeah, sure. You might remember the face, but I think you would really remember it if that was the message in the media. This person that had sex with an alien, you'd be like, oh, that guy.
There would, of course, Rule 34, which says if you can talk about it, there'd be porn of it. But you never heard Rule 34? Okay, no. Well, let's think if you can think of it, someone's made porn about it.
Yeah.
So, prawns and humans, I do not doubt that there was movies of that.
Yeah, well, it was suggested that the Nigerians, because there was, when they said the Nigerians early in the film.
Yeah, they were trying everything to get...
and there was the
DNA to try.
Yeah, and there was a shot that was saying even offering sexual services, or there was some line of dialogue that the newsreader said, and there was a shot of a woman walking out of the Nigerian gang, so it was like, that's where it would be coming from, the porn. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, I've got
Pornhub would have its own prawn channel.
This would be Prawn Hub.
Prawn Hub.
I step prawn.
Sorry, watch the accent. Eh?
What have you been doing? You're caught in the dryer. Yes. Okay, well, let's talk about the plot of this movie. Let's get stuck in it, because it's a good fun movie.
It is. So just a few details. Like we said, Neill Blomkamp was his first big feature film. He's gone on, done Chappie, I really like Chappie. We'll have to do Chappie as one. And Elysium, which, you mentioned a few.
Elysium didn't get great marks, but I really liked it.
I liked it too,
it's got, what's that guy's name again? Sharlto?
Yeah.
So I was going to call him Shiloh, but that's like from the play, Shakespeare.
Or Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, yeah, Shia LaBeouf. Oh, geez, I watched Transformers the other night. That doesn't age well.
Doesn't it?
No, Shia's character is such a douchebag.
Megan Fox stays the same, but right?
Oh, yes, poor
I
Megan.
still remember. Like I don't know. When did Transformers come out? Do you remember the
Similar sort of time as this, actually. 2008,
yeah. So
2007.
I was much older, and you're just like, how gratuitous for teenage boys is that meet and greet of her on the car?
Oh,
Like, it's just like, it's ridiculous. Like, Michael Bay they haven't even attempted to kind of like, oh, it's like, she's changing the wheel of the tire, and so she bends over. They're just like, nah, just bend over the car. We just need a shot.
yeah.
Like, they have not even attempted.
It's almost like it's taken straight from the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, the 90s, they did it right. That's what I mean. It's not aged well. I was watching it with my kids, and I was like, feeling embarrassed. I was going, kids, no, come on. Oh, no.
No. But we always look for the good in it, so we might have to come back and watch that film, sorry. And
there is some good in that. There's some
sci-fi.
peculiar decisions militarily to, like, go into a city to hide something.
Maybe we'll have to get stuck into that film. Let's not go down that path too much tonight, but we might need to come back.
A great thing about it, though, Optimus Prime, the same voice from the 80s cartoon.
Yeah, that's brilliant, isn't it?
That's wonderful.
Yeah, he's a great voice. Blomkamp and Terry Tatchell, and also wrote the story or the screenplay and produced by Peter Jackson and his long-term producing partner, Caroline Cunningham. Now, they made a bucket load of money off this film.
It was quite successful.
Him opening his wallet and pulling out 30 mil, it made 210 mil in the US alone. So he well and truly got his money back, right? Charlton Coppola plays Wikus vandemerwe. I'm sure.
Wikus vandemerwe.
Jason Cope also is Christopher Johnson, the big District 9 prawn. David Jones is the Colonel Cobus Benter. He's just a sadistic son of a bitch, isn't he?
Sadistic. He was driven, shall we say.
No, he's deliberately...
He was pretty mean.
He's deliberately done to be super mean, which also carries over in reverse, doesn't it? That Charlton Coppola kind of plays that same role in Elysium then, doesn't he?
Yes.
It's like almost like he plays very similar military...
And when I watched Elysium, I saw Charlton doing his thing and the voice, and I was like, oh, where do I know him from? And finally it's like clicked after a few scenes where you sort of hear him talking, you go, that's Wikus.
Yeah, but now he's the tough arsehole.
But yeah, whereas in District 9, he's basically, a nerdy accountanty type person. He even has little like knitted vests and pocket protector and weird glass, and he's sort of like a character from The Office.
Yes. And Vanessa Hayward plays his wife, Tanya.
Okay, so Peter Jackson had Neill Blomkamp lined up to do Halo.
That's what it was.
Because you're talking about computer games. Halo.
They couldn't get Halo made, could
No
they?
funding. They said, no, we're not going to do that for you. Because that would have been good. And so they said, well, no worries. We'll just we'll expand your little short movie into something a bit bigger.
Yes.
And thank goodness they did.
That's right. I knew that. I knew that at the time, but I just didn't know it now.
Yeah, so the budget about $30 million. Box office about 210. 7 times the money back. That's pretty good.
Return on your... his wallet got a bit fatter. Peter Jackson's wallet just got that little bit
why
chubbier.
not?
And it was filmed in New Zealand, South Africa and USA, presuming that a lot of the special effects probably for wetter. So, let's get into the plot. It does start in 1982.
1982, a gigantic spaceship comes floating down out of space. It doesn't go near any of the major cities. I think it even mentions it doesn't turn up in New York or...
everyone was surprised it turned up in Joburg.
It turned up in Johannesburg, and it's just over there, and they went, well, there's a bit of panic, a bit of fear, what's going on. But I think it sat there for 3 days or 3 weeks or 3 months, or I can't remember what it was. It's just sitting there for a while, and finally they went, okay, it's not, there's no demands that they can't communicate with it. It's not transmitting anything, so they flew their helicopters in and cut their way in.
Yeah.
And in there they found like this mess of just aliens, 1 million of them, I think they said.
Yeah. And they were sort of malnourished, starving,
diseased.
They didn't look in good condition, struggled to put words together, or they couldn't understand them. And so the South African government relocated them off the spaceship into a camp they named District 9.
District 9.
And this is like, in terms of the camera, we're getting the way this film opens, we've got interviews going on there's a multinational guy, there's a reporter, we're getting cuts of, like, pretty abrupt cuts of newsreels and raw footage from the event of the spaceship arriving. So we're not seeing it, being played out as a standard sort of narrative film. It's more of a documentary style. And in fact, I would probably label it a bit more going into that mockumentary style, especially in the first half of this film, because it is trying to set up, like, this is real footage, this really happened. And look, and also then with the special effects, I mean, it blew me away what those special effects are like. And I thought it was also a very clever way, because
they've
you're
stood up well, haven't they?
Yeah, and they have stood up now that it's 11 years later, but it's like a clever way of showing a spaceship. It's a little bit like you saying the monster through red eye, or through night vision. It's the same here, because you're seeing a spaceship through old news footage. So it's kind of extra grainy and stuff.
Yeah.
You know? So kind of you get away, you're a bit more forgiving of it, you know. So I thought that was really clever. But then really quickly, they talk about, well, over the years it's turned into a slum, and the locals are complaining, and we sort of have again this news footage of, are they like stealing petrol or something, or parts of a car or something, and then there's a bit of a fight going on in the petrol station.
Yeah, they're causing problems.
They're causing problems, the prawns. And there's kind of signs up, and they're eating from bins, you know, and there's sort of, again, news footage of, you know, locals saying, we didn't want them here. Why have they, you know, why don't they just go back home? You know, that kind of idea. Very, very classic. And again, we have these kind of cuts to interviews of, again, as I said, those people, multinational and security personnel.
Office workers.
Yeah, and then we start getting introduced, I think, like as you said, we see some footage that is an interviews of, like, someone that worked with Wikus's dad, sort of saying that, yeah, we wouldn't know what's going on. Following the unrest between the aliens and the locals, the government hires the multinational United. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a connection here to the UN in a way, isn't it? Kind of this idea. I think it felt like they were labelled very similar to the UN. But these guys are a private company. They're a huge weapons manufacturer. And they are put in charge to relocate the aliens to this new camp city, far out of the city.
And the head of MNU, he's going to introduce the MNU worker who's going to be in charge of this relocation, this handing out the eviction notices under some articles of MNU, whatever it is, so to make it all legal.
Yeah.
And introduces Wikusvandemerwe. He says, and then I think he's asked the question. Maybe he doesn't even ask a question. He just says, and yeah, the fact that he's married my daughter it didn't really play into this. He's an effective, and you kind of go, oh, bullcrap. You know? Nobody's fooled.
That's right. And Wikus is kind of surprised, and also looks very quickly out of context, doesn't he? You know, like he doesn't really know what he's about to do.
You know, he's oh, I'm very pleased. You know, he does look very pleased, and he's chuffed, and everyone's patting him on the back, but he's clearly an office worker. He is not a field worker at all. He looks totally nerdy and out of touch. And
this is where we get a really nice cut as well, that he's kind of adjusting his lapel and he's talking to camera, and he talks about his wife a little bit, and he talks about what they're going to do, the procedure of going in and moving the prawns, tells us a little about the prawns, and also it's intercut with them all getting ready, you know, the military guys, them loading up the guns and those sort of things. And in fact, there's even an abrupt bit that he goes, oh, it's time to go, and he kind of drops the mic, you know. So it's as I was saying before, that they really went for this style of documentary, trying to make it look as real as possible. And
then I love his little confrontation with the soldier. Says, you know, you seem to have more ammunition than maybe what you need.
Then regulation,
yeah. Because so you get, I was getting the idea that he's not super comfortable with the violence and with confrontation, you know, which is funny because he's kind of tries to big note himself a bit there, but he's clearly anxious about the fact that these people have got lots of weapons and ammo when they're supposed to be going in getting signatures.
Yes.
So I think there's a bit of a save the cat there, sort of, where he's kind of like, okay, we're going into this thing, but we're not going to kill them, we're just going to get signatures, right? And then, of course, he gets yelled at. We get introduced then to the opposite of save the cat, the kill the cat moment, where, as I said, the head guy, whatever his name was,
David James.
David James?
Oh, that's
Colonel.
the actor.
The Colonel. Comes in and yells at him and pushes him, or shoves him aside, which is a bit, okay, that he's not a nice man.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, we learn pretty quickly with him, as soon as they get to District 9, him, shoot first, basically. Shoot first, ask questions later is kind of the strategy, isn't it? As all part of this as well, this doco style, there is really intense, heavy beat music here. It's very dramatic. It's very thematic of, them going in as a big military presence. You see I know there's a big wide shot of all the tankers going into District 9.
Yeah, lots of rolling convoys of armoured carriers.
Yeah.
They're not just sort of going in little cars or a bus.
And again, you get this impression, don't you, that it's kind of like we're seeing what we said before of, the government kind of saying, we're just going to move these people, these aliens, to a nicer place. And in reality, it's quite a sort of military...
They must be expecting to have to fight. Because they're going in there. I mean, sure, there's the various human gangs that are in there that are causing trouble, but they leave them alone and they get left alone and they roll on in. They immediately start, hitting houses, these shacks.
These little shacks.
He goes in and finds an ornery prawn that sort of spits on the ground and shoves, and I think he gets shot.
Yeah.
There you go, and that's fine. And there's
the force of the
there was another one there who then just hits the paper out of the way or something.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh yeah, that's it. We got his mark. We got it. That's all we needed." And he says, "All right, let's go." And then there's
another one they do bribery. They go, here's some cat food if you sign.
Yeah, they chuck cat food to distract him. He says, "Oh, what is it with the cat food?" Yeah, so we find that cat food's like catnip for prawns. They don't quite get intoxicated from it. There's something about it,
but they really like the taste.
Well, yeah, it's a nice little touch at cat food. Who knows why? But they go around. There's a couple of those, and then we see Christopher Johnson, this alien fellow. He looks a bit more organised, a little bit more mentally together.
Yeah.
And I've got to wonder if maybe the disease and everything, because there's so many unanswered questions.
Yeah.
The disease and the terrible state that these aliens were found in may have been, caused brain damage.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these aliens, as much as you like to give them the credit, the fact they're in bad conditions and all the rest of it, aren't real clever.
No.
So you got to wonder, did they suffer brain damage from malnutrition, from disease, and so forth? And of course, then there are kids. They in fact, while they go around, they find the eggs and they smash the eggs and they laugh about it. So it's really rough. It's a bit.
They burn them.
Yeah. Then they're popping. That's the little buggers.
Yeah.
Popping. Yeah. So that's.
You don't have a permit for this.
Yeah, but nonetheless, there are kids being born in there. They've gone from...
because the population's gone up.
They've gone from 9 million up to 3 million or whatever it is over the past 20 years or something. So you got to think that the new generations then are probably more the interacting with the gangsters and so forth. But yeah, they do. They come across... we come across Christopher Johnson.
Yeah.
And he's far more together and he's instructing his son.
Yeah.
And now, when I watched this the first time, I swear they had subtitles.
They did. There's subtitles for this, but there was none when we watched it.
Okay, there we go. So the one we watched didn't have I thought they would have been baked into the movie. There must have been different versions.
I don't know, yeah.
Because, they had subtitles when I watched it anyways.
They had subtitles on the version.
You didn't entirely need them, as it turns out, but, there were some long exchanges where you're kind of going, okay, without subtitles, this is, I get in a couple of these movies we're watching on Netflix where there's like a long exchange in Korean or something, and you sit there going, what? And you actually turn on the subtitles, and it tells you, phew, because you can't sit there for a minute and a half. The occasional sort of barked order or little exchange, yeah, sure, but a full-on conversation. You start going...
Especially, I did notice, when you do what we said before, getting to that final scene where he does double-cross him, he didn't... without subtitles, you didn't see that he actually says, "Oh, it will take 3 years to fix you," and whereas because there's no subtitles, it's 3 years. Yeah. You're like, what, we missed something. There's a plot point there we missed.
Yeah. So anyway, they sort of pop some eggs. They get some signature from someone, and we get Christopher Johnson and his son. They're foraging around. They sort of get something. And they have this delicate operation where they've got this little canister. They pour some stuff in, and they have this chemistry set, and then it pop. Ooh, yeah. And then they hear the approaching goons, so they quickly hide stuff and go out the back way. And sure enough, this is where Wikus turns up and starts searching through, and he's still kind of being the big man, going, "Oh, there's definitely weapons here. There's some sort of a chemistry set," which is confusing for him because nowhere else has he come across anything so sophisticated as someone actually doing something. And there's computer parts. He says the computer's decorating the walls. And you go, well, you suspect actually no, he's probably been scavenging what parts and things he can from it. And this is where he finds, this is sort of the turning point, the inciting incident where he picks up this canister they were messing around with, and he says it's not a weapon, but it definitely looks dangerous. And he presses the button, and it sprays black oil. It looks like oil in his face, and he coughs and pushes the camera aside, and he splutters and recovers, and he says, "Oh, you'll cut that bit. Okay, we'll start from here. Yes, it's a bit dangerous. I'll just seal it up here. It's not a bomb or anything, but the lab guys definitely want to see this." And he seals it up, and then he has another bit of a coughing fit, and he comes out, and they catch Christopher Johnson and say, you got to sign this form. And they threaten him, and they threaten his son. We'll take your son away from you. And this has an effect on old Mr. Johnson. Yeah. Who does he sign it? I think he does. He eventually signs it. He does
sign it, yeah.
And eventually they leave him alone. Because you sit there as the audience, you're going, "Oh, leave this poor kid alone. He's such a cute little guy." It's like watching The Mandalorian, that little baby Yoda creature. It's not Yoda, but it's a Yoda-like being. And it's the same deal. It's just this cute little guy, little kid growing up in a slum, poor thing. But yeah, they finally let him go, and they move on. They head on back out. They've sort of done...
Wikus is not feeling stuff.
Oh, he got bashed by an alien as well.
Yeah. He gets swinged, and there's a scene there where he gets kind of whacked, and again, the military kind of come in and blow them apart. It just shows that the humans are way more in control, under the thumb. It's a pretty unfair environment. That's the whole point of all that huge scene, isn't it, really? They burn the baby. "Oh, you don't have a permit for the babies? Burn them, pop, and just, sign here, and, oh, we got his claw mark, and, oh, you're causing trouble, you're a gang member, and, oh, have you got a license for a baby? This is an illegal child, So it's it just shows you it's heavily regulated. There's no way out really for the prawns. Is there?
No, it's not like any of them are trained lawyers.
No, and they're not really they're not at all helping them either. No. That's the thing. It's you're expecting them to be something else, but you're not even offering any sort of help, any sort of assistance. So anyway, he does start going downhill, and I remember they take him out of. They're like, "That's enough for today," or whatever. He's had enough.
His arm is a bit mashed.
Yeah, and he goes back to NU quarters, and he's there in his office, and he's looking worse to wear already, and he's picking his nails.
Oh, that's right. He
picks off a fingernail.
Oh, and then he pulls off another one with his teeth.
He pulls it off, and he goes to the bathroom and pulls it off with his teeth.
Oh, the poor woman beside me was not dealing with that well.
And then he's kind of, not well. So he, he heads home. He heads home, and he's coughing, and he's, I think he's been a bit sick or whatever, he's holding in, and that's right, he's just holding it in.
He's got to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, that's right. And he kind of comes in, surprise party, and it's the boss, and it's who's his father-in-law, and it's his parents, and he.
It was a very funny sitcom moment where he goes, "Oh, I'm so glad I'm back home. This has really been a bit rough." And I think, "Yes, come through. Why is it all dark?" You're like, "Oh," he's about to sort of say some things that perhaps would be bad. And then, the lights turn on, everyone's there, and he's like, oh, yeah, this is good. I really have to go. Congratulations. Yes, thank you for the... I really have to go.
I need to talk to you about what happened out there today.
And then they take him to
take
him to the cake. He said, just cut the cake. Oh, okay, I just cut the cake.
And just vomits all over the cake.
And that's kind of a bit of a Peter Jackson moment, though. Before Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson was better known for Brain Dead, or as they know it in America, Dead Alive, which is, I'm not sure why the name changed, but Dead Alive or Brain Dead, either one. And then Bad Taste. Have you ever seen Bad Taste? This is like his first feature. Yeah. That was quite unsettling. And also the Meet the Feebles.
Yeah, Meet the Feebles.
Yeah, so all of them were quite unsettling and vomiting.
And the Frighteners with Michael J. Fox is like ghosts and stuff, and I think there is a bit of, vomiting and spew and...
Yeah, so surprisingly...
It's a bit of a theme of his.
He didn't actually get that into Lord of the Rings.
No, yeah, he moved on. He put it in this... He allowed Wikus to demonstrate it again. So anyway, then he's taken off to hospital, and sort of in hospital, he's in the bed, and his wife's separated, and he's looking at his arm, and he's all bandaged up, and
doctor's like, that doesn't look good.
Doesn't look good, and they unband, and it's a claw. It's
it flops out as well, it would be called a pincer in that case.
Yes, yeah.
But it's like this 3-fingered claw thing that the
And he starts screaming, and the doctor's like, oh, goes off, and you get all these MU guards run down, and they take him away. They take him away down to their dissecting lab.
They're down their lab,
yeah, underground, and it's a good. I don't know if it's straight away or not, but his wife is then told by her father that the doctors are doing the best they can, and all this, and we kind of have that intercut with that scene of they examine him. They're like, we've never had a human cross prawn like this. Can he fire a weapon? And so they take him over, and he's like, what are you doing? And I don't want to fire this gun. And the gun comes alive as soon as they put the pincer onto it. Kind of zaps up, and they wheel in a cow or whatever in front of the thing. He's like, and he's like, I'm not going to shoot. And then the doctor just zaps him with an electric prod, and of course he fires this gun, and the cow just disintegrates.
Oh, those guns
sprays him on the face, like hits his face.
Those guns are very imaginative. All very different. There's one that like shoots
every gun
lightning bolts, and then one that fired like a machine gun, and then there's the one that just exploded things.
So, I mean, again, the prawns had to have some sort of intelligence,
but
didn't they? I mean,
why would you have 3 guns like that? What? Surely the one that just explodes things is enough. Why would you need that?
They come from outer space. There could be different types of aliens that weaponry.
Maybe, I guess so.
There could be a blob kind of alien that you fire a machine gun, and bullets just boop, 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 whereas you need a zapper that explodes.
And this is one of the nice things about this film is there's so many unanswered questions.
There is. It's constant.
We're just wondering this exact question. So they've got this enormous spaceship that crossed interstellar space. And
stopped here.
It had at least 1 million creatures on board, but you'd imagine quite a bit more because they're having trouble. And yet none of them seem to be able to operate, and they're not showing great intelligence. Like
they're not.
Because you can imagine if they first sort of got them, and when they recovered a bit, they're like, immediately demonstrating science and stuff. Like they would have gone, okay, hey, let's go. But instead, they were kind of a bit lost. There was that theory someone put forward that these were the workers, and without their chain of command, their hierarchy, they're like insect workers. They were kind of lost, a bit aimless, which might be the case. Maybe that was it. As I said, maybe they was like just really damaged from whatever the disease was.
Well, I guess when you think about it, like if you imagine one of these Navy warships floated into a wharf somewhere in the world, and all the IT engineers that can actually drive the boat are dead.
Yeah, if you still had the
you just got all the soldiers, right? Like all the
well, maybe not even many soldiers. Maybe you just had a lot of the janitors and the cooks, and there's no problems with cooks and janitors. But when you turn around and ask them how to operate,
can you actually
the F-15? Can you fly that F-15? No. Like, what? Are you crazy? I don't even know how to open the hatch.
I don't even know how they get in.
I could have a go at it, but it'll be no better than you. Whatever. No, you get me my correct cooking equipment. I can feed 5,000 people. But of course, all that's up in the ship and you've taken them away, and they're like going, well, what have I got here? A garbage can, I guess. Yeah.
So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, or you just take a whole bunch of IT people out of their computers and everything and chuck them on an island. And like sitting around going, do we dig? Do we dig holes?
Dig down?
I've seen builders dig holes. Let's do that. You're like, what? Who knows? I've played Minecraft.
Hey IT guys, here's some cat food.
Oh,
Okay. We don't have to cook tonight. We don't have to hunt.
it'll be ramen. Here's instant ramen. Ooh, this is the fancy kind. It's got the 2 sachets in it.
So he's tested on, and as we also said a little bit before, the guns work, and then they decide, well, hey, this is worth billions of dollars, and the father's in on this conversation. It's the father, and it looks like a couple of head honchos.
Well,
he
does seem to look like he's being concerned, and then the doctor finally sort of says, yeah, we're going to need 100% tissue samples or something like that. And the father kind of looks a bit confused about what that means. So we're going to have to strip all of his organs and everything. And the father goes, I understand. Okay. Where do you need me to sign? You know?
Yeah, it's like, okay, no worries. And they all kind of nod and go off. And there's a nice scene here, I think, for the plots of the film, for the plot of the film, because then he actually says to the daughter that, you know, he's dead. You know, they couldn't save him, and I really liked that, because it's, you know, that's father and daughter and her husband, and
it was nice that his wife was genuinely concerned. Yeah, she liked
would be.
it.
It makes sense. Like, you know, even though he turned up sick and all that, like it made sense, right? Like it made sense.
And she was getting confused when because he escapes, and then he's
then that's the next bit, isn't it? Yeah, that he escapes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know he's sitting there going, this was like a couple of weeks ago now. He escapes, right?
The memory, it's going. Okay, so he does this. Anyway, that was a nice little scene. The father telling her that, you know, he's died. He escapes from in the real last minute kind of moment, doesn't he? He's like, they're about to cut him up.
His alien arm is really strong.
Yeah,
it busts free, and then he takes off the straps, and then he punches some dude, and he runs for it, and he manages to get out into the streets. And
he steals some clothes. The good old stealing
wraps
clothes.
Like a blanket over half his body that's gone all manky.
Yeah.
And he runs off into the. He goes back to the fast food place that he visited earlier. And he tries to order some stuff, and then
that's where we get the newsflash from the government officials that this man is wanted for having sex with the prawns.
Yes, no.
I like that. Everyone, just like. They really went crazy on it, didn't they? Just like start screaming. And
I just want my food.
And he like starts eating someone's food as well.
Like,
yeah, which you would, of course, if you're starving. And
and then he has to run again. And the only place he can go, of course, is the
slums. The one place, yeah. And I think he tries to phone his wife one last time, and
and she's not. She's a bit confused about what's going on. Like, they're saying terrible things.
Yeah, she says to him, did you have sex? And he's like, I never had sex with aliens. Imagine explaining that to your wife. Sorry.
She wouldn't believe it. The first chance I got to have sex with an alien, bang, I'd be in there.
That's all right.
It's on my list. You know, you got the little list of exceptions. One of them, the only one on there is an actual alien from outer space. I can do that.
You can do that. You're going for it?
You know, unless it looks like a spider. I'm just not going there.
That is... Oh, what was that show on Netflix you and I both watched? It was an animation series, and then she was the spider, remember?
Oh, the Love, Sex and Robots.
Love, Sex and Robots, and there's
Death, Sex and Robots.
You know? And there's the one that it's like a fantasy on the ship and everything, but then it's actually that it is an alien spider that's like, and they're like cocooned.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he goes off and thinks it's his long lost girlfriend or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's gross. So even that's the thing with an alien, you might be going down some subconscious path.
I might think it's just one of those big-eyed grey, like Paul type aliens.
You're happy with that kind of alien?
Yeah, that alien. I mean, you know, like probably
you'd
not
bang that any day of the week.
Probably not so foul-mouthed as Paul. You know, I'd probably want something like more sophisticated alien. I don't.
He was open for. He said, men, women, it's all.
Well, it doesn't count as interspecies.
That's right.
Like when they're Arcturian, man.
No, but he's raised to people. They're like, we're gone.
It's just all about the fun.
It's all about the fun of it.
When it's Arcturian, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, there you go.
As they say in some places.
I think your fantasy is probably more like Galaxy Quest and like those kind of...
Probably more like the Galaxy
Quest. Or the
Quest.
old-fashioned Star Trek aliens where it's just like, they're just an alien. It's just a human and an alien.
It's just a human with like a bit of freckles or something. No, these are my special sensory freckles that let me detect gamma wave radiation.
Yeah. But beyond that, I'm pretty much just a hot
human. Otherwise a hot human, yeah.
So he's in District 9. He's gone. What happens next?
He runs across Christopher. He goes back because he's going, it must have been that bloody thing. So he goes back to Christopher and says, what the hell, man? You're like squirting me with crap and it's doing shit. And then he sees the spaceship diagram.
Yeah.
And the kid is looking at the map.
Yeah.
And he says, you know what, you're leaving here. You've got something going on. They sort of say yes. And he says, well, you got to help me. He says, well, we need that like goopy thing,
fluid.
But it's sort of one-side conversation here. But you get the idea. Yeah. And he says, well, sure. Oh, pardon me. I can get you in there.
Yeah.
And they say, okay, off they go.
And in exchange, you can change me back. That's
And Christopher John said, yes. Probably.
Showing huge level of intelligence, like manipulation of the truth.
Yes.
Yes! Fingers crossed.
Well, you got to think, though, with the level of genetic technology they have, he's probably figuring, we must be able to.
Yeah, that's the thing. It'd be an intelligent decision. Yeah, we can do that, I think, at some point.
I'm not a doctor.
Yeah, but I think I can run that machine that does it.
We're turning you into a problem. Must be able to turn you back, right?
Sorry.
Just get some
I
other
reverse engineer what I did. Okay.
Black goop that turns you into people, I suppose.
And all we have to do is get to that ship. Trust me.
So they go back to Eminu, and conveniently they didn't lock Wikus out, so he could still get his access codes.
Yes.
And they get in, they get down into where the weapons are being kept, and they search it for the black goop. They find it, of course, but in come the mercenaries. Yeah,
but just before that, they do have that moment where Christopher, there's where Wikus had been sort of dissected. They were also doing a lot of experiments and dissecting and cutting up the prawns for many ways. And he sees his old friend Paul, which was
Paul Hogan. He's put another shrimp on the barbie, and he's like, "What the hell, man?"
Which was one of the prawn characters in that opening sort of sequence, and he's shocked by it, stunned by it. Christopher, like he can't move really. And you're right, all the mercenaries run in, and there's a bit of a standoff, and Christopher he's trying to, and he's probably thinking, "I don't want to save you. I really don't want to save you."
He's probably thinking, "This is worse than I thought," because it's bad that we're being a bit picked on. And, maybe they were the workers in that spaceship, and maybe they're kind of used to having a strong hierarchy. And so, though they don't like it, perhaps it's kind of like, well, this is our lot in life.
Yes.
But when he sees this, he goes, well, okay, this is a little bit much.
Yeah.
But they get a hold of some guns, and we have this really cool shootout where these guns that Wikus is just kind of firing blindly, but it's just this incredible zappy, exploding gun, which is just... I can't believe these mercenaries kept moving forward shooting.
Yeah, I know.
I've seen my buddy just literally turn into red mist.
Yeah.
I'd be going, no. Like, I've got a bulletproof vest on. That's just not going to help.
No, it's not going to do anything.
The goggles, they do nothing. Here a bulletproof vest, you're going against this guy.
So they manage to escape, and they get back to District 9 again.
Yes.
And the
mind you, there is that moment where Paul says... Okay, how do we get out of here? He says, I only said we could get you in here. and there's no escape plan.
Yeah, and he fires through the wall, doesn't he?
Yeah,
he blows up a wall.
Explodes the wall, and they run off.
And they run off. They get away, but the mercenaries are hunting them, and they get back to District 9. This is where, when they get back and start firing up the ship, that then he reveals that the ship's underneath Christopher's house. There's a secret compartment. Oh, he'd been hiding this all this time.
You crafty bugger.
This definitely is not in the regulations. You're definitely not allowed this. And And
which is funny because they want them to leave. They're saying, go back to where you came from, but you can't have any spaceships.
No, you can't go on a spaceship
Just
back.
somehow get back to where you came from.
And but this is where Christopher lets him know that be about 3 years and I'll return for you. And Wikus is then not happy. He's enraged, and he actually knocks Christopher down
because he's transforming more and more.
Yeah,
his whole arm and his bits of his other arm starting to get these sort of scaly protrusions.
Chunks. Yeah, there's chunks going on, isn't there? There's little chunks of the exoskeletons.
We're getting a bit of body horror sort of thing.
So he knocks Christopher down and hops into the module of the mothership himself and tries to take off. The little son, he's sort of like, he's disturbed by it, but he does help. Wikus says, do you want to get back to the ship? Help me. So you navigate or do something. And because he locks Christopher out, that's what he does, doesn't he? When he shuts the mother, shuts the ship down. And he fangs this ship out. And there's a great moment, isn't there? Because there's like the news are filming from a helicopter and they're like, oh my goodness, this ship's emerging from the dirt, and it kind of hovers up above the ground for a few moments. And
we also learn at this point where previously an object had been seen falling from the ship, but no one had been able to find it and no one knew what it was.
Yes, so they figure that this must have been it. But then with that, Venter, the colonel, rocks up and blows, sends a fire and down to the ship, and Wikus is kind of put off guard and crashes, whatever it is, 50 or...
I know, because you're sitting there going, oh, he'll get to the ship,
he'll get there, yeah.
But no, not at all. He crashes.
Yeah.
And this starts the great big end sequence.
Yeah, the big sequence that you talked about before, that we have this real standoff between Venter, and he captures Wikus and then Christopher, but then the Nigerian gang kind of kick into gear and they blow them up.
And then the armoured suit comes to life. Yeah. The kid gets in the ship and starts up the armoured suit and does a few other bits and pieces. Yeah. Has some sort of a plan going on there. He's a clever little kid.
And then the mercenaries kind of like retreat, but then kind of come back in as a military force. Wikus gets in that big suit and starts blowing, he blows the Nigerians out and kind of gets free. And there's that great moment for a character, isn't there, that he could kind of run for it and probably be okay, or he could save Christopher.
Because Christopher's in trouble.
Yeah, so Christopher's been taken by a couple of the others to be executed, and taken off to the sort of side of one of the slum buildings. And there's a great moment there, isn't there? Because Wikus is kind of like thinking about running, and at this point also, once he's in that thing, you notice his eye changes from, it's like he's had his two human eyes, but then it's like he's got one human eye, one prawn eye.
Yeah, so like polychromatio.
Yeah, but it's a real nice transition moment, isn't it? Because he's still human enough that he could just run away and be like protect himself, but he kind of he sways to help Christopher.
Yeah, he picks up what was he pick up as a shield or something?
Yeah, he picks a car door or something.
Yeah. Grabs Christian, drags him and runs for it. And this is just like this running. I don't know how long this battle scene goes for.
It must be about 15 minutes.
It feels long.
Yeah, because there's a guy up high, the thing. There's a
helicopters. There's rocket launchers.
There's rocket launcher. If throws the rocket launcher, tries to grab it, throw it away.
Yeah, and it's just fantastic, and the battle sort of wages on and crash, and then the kid finally does something, and Wikus sort of finally, with his last staggering bit, manages to kill Venter.
Yeah.
And he falls out of his armor suit and he's all messed up. He's not happy about it.
It's great that I love that the suit collapses and he's dead. The suit's dead. It's actually the suit is dead.
Sort of,
it bleeds.
It expels him. He almost vomits out of it. Onto the ground.
Yeah, and the suit gives up and it's it's oil and stuff, whatever.
It's black goop.
It's black goop pulls out.
Yeah, but Christopher's got back to his son and the ship, and a light starts up like a tractor beam.
Yes,
sucks this ship up because you're wondering how on earth the ship got shot down, how they're going to get in there, but the son knows the schematics of the ship. I'm guessing Christopher basically drilled it into him the whole time. Or he just knew.
He manages to make the mothership send down a massive beam of a tractor beam, right?
Yeah, the one that they would normally abduct people with.
Yeah, that's right. The old-fashioned one where they do the anal probes and picks up the ship and just starts going up and up and up and up and up to the sky. And this is where Venter is not quite dead. And he comes out and he's like, orders something. But with that, just some regular prawns kind of circle in.
Yeah.
And, Wikus is kind of pretty much dead. But those prawns go, right, there's now a bunch of us and there's one of you. And I think he shoots one, but then the rest of them grab and just... he's
ripped apart. Literally.
And start eating him, I think.
Oh, yeah, why not, hey? They're hungry.
Yeah. So that's... And then it leaves Earth. And so we now kind of full circle come back to those interviews. As you said earlier, that we realise some of those interviews are now post. They were always post the event. And it's his father, Wikus' father, and his mother. And it also reveals... It was the sort of the intern he had earlier said, he revealed the secrets to the public about NU.
Yeah.
Revealed all of their kind of experiments to the public, which kind of causes a lot of issues for NU. And the aliens are moved on to the new camp called District 10, sorry. And then his wife is talking to camera sort of in the bedroom, and she shows this metal flower that was at her front door.
Yeah, and they're saying that no one really knows what happened to Wikus. They assume that he died in the fight.
Yeah.
But we get like a shot then at the end of like a prawn, really.
Yeah.
Wearing a bit of clothes.
Yes.
And crafting some metal.
This same sort of rose metal. Yeah. So it's a nice end.
Yeah, so Wikus totally changed.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to wait for maybe
at least 3 years.
We don't know if he's coming. You got to think Christopher Johnson would try to come back. Because Wikus came back for him, and I don't know.
I thought so. And I've got to say, again, when I did see this, I mean, each time I've kind of seen it, I want a sequel.
I know, everyone does, but...
You really want to know... You really want Christopher to come back, don't you?
But I have a feeling this might be one of those movies where it's best without one. Like, a sequel might give too much away.
Yeah.
And maybe that would not be a good thing. Because I think a lot of times we get sequels because, this movie was financially successful. So it's popular. It has this great story and world. There's mystery of these aliens. And where did Christopher go?
Yeah.
What was he intended to do? What were these aliens? How come they were so, I don't know, basic? Like they
like, why were they like that?
Yeah, why did they not have more like Christopher Johnson who... Because had most of them been like clever fellas like that, they would have been probably taken in by companies for researchers, not to do research on them, but for them to work with humans.
Do research on humans.
To do research. Because an alien viewpoint with what they've seen and know
technology,
would look at human research and go, oh, here's some interesting insights for you or something. But clearly they just weren't.
Well, but also
like
the question of like, okay, they've come here and they're just randomly locked up and maybe they were sick or whatever. It's like, well, Christopher doesn't answer those questions, but he basically says, well, I've got to go back to the home and I'll come back in 3 years or something. It's like, so they came here to begin with, so maybe they did just crash land because of a virus or whatever.
Yeah,
but obviously it sounds like he's going back to the home planet. It's not, quite often these alien stories we've seen, it's like, they're leaving the home planet because it's destroyed and there's nowhere else to go. It's more like they have rocked up, destroyed, sick, lost the leaders, whatever. Something's wrong with the ship, but back home's okay. So that just kind of begs you, like, for me, it's like, wow, what would
was this just a cruise ship? And that's the
patrons.
They're the passengers.
Yeah.
They're just tourists.
They're just tourists.
That's why they're useless. Because they're just all randoms, like, off the streets. They're just...
On the cruise ship, they stopped feeding us one day.
Yeah, except for the cruise ship, well, back home, I'm a shoe salesman.
Yeah.
What do I know about these weapons?
Yeah.
You ask me about the technology, I can tell you about prawn shoes.
Yeah, that's right.
But, whatever. He's like, I'm a nail technician. If you had prawn hands, I could make you look fantastic.
Yes, that's right.
But firing a gun or flying a spaceship...
I've never done that. Yeah.
It was just only one actual crew member of the... I actually quite like this theory that it was actually a pleasure cruise. And because you imagine at the best of times, I think pleasure cruises tend to devolve into mass piles of sickness and orgiastic foolishness.
Yeah. Buffets that never end.
Never-ending buffets, like...
Toilet bowls that are overflowing.
Yeah, and so it's basically... That's what's happened is they've all got a bout of really bad food poisoning and...
Remember why they were there.
The whole crew has died off, except for Christopher Johnson, like the chief engineer or something, or maybe the intern. Maybe he's only the intern, but he just knows enough that, because let's face it, most of it seem to be automated.
Yeah.
Vickers was able to actually sort of fly around a bit.
Yeah.
You don't need a bit of extra knowledge. Yeah.
So it's interesting, but okay. So you're saying no sequel. I'm just saying, I suppose it's a credit to the filmmakers and the story, because it is one of those ones you're like, I want to know more. I want more. Like when you end a TV show where it's like, it's almost like a bit of grief that it's ended,
Right.
And quite often you don't get that with a film. This film, I don't know if I had that same feeling the other night, because I've seen this a few times now, but I do just remember the first time I watched it, I was like, I want him to come back,
you want something
more.
to happen.
I want to know more about this world. I want to, and all these questions that haven't been answered. Come back and blow up the humans.
Or what other tragedy is there? Is there something?
But when you do break it down, like we've just done, like there is so much of a connection between apartheid and the Holocaust. Like that's the intention of this story. What I was saying before, I really feel like a modern day fable or myth almost. It's like we can't really make that a sequel, because that was the power in this story. If you bring him back, it becomes a totally different film.
Yeah.
Does he come back for revenge? Does he come back to reveal a whole nother part of humanity? What does he do? But it's hard to. You kind of can't repeat that original media. And as we know, sometimes they make those sequels, and the sequels are just like, should have made that.
Well, Highlander. Highlander's a perfect example. Highlander, the first one, it's a low-budget film. Some of the special effects are a bit dodgy. Some of the acting is a bit questionable. Fantastic soundtrack by Queen.
Yes.
And it's just this beautiful mythos that just people fell in love with, this idea of these immortals. So much so that they went, okay, we're going to make a sequel. But how do you have a sequel from Highlander? It's like there can be only one, and he was one.
He was the one.
And they go, well, we can get... Somehow they got Sean Connery back. I think that was a bad choice by Sean. Yeah, I know. They would have just basically wheeled a truck of money after him over here.
Yeah, pretty much happens most of the time.
And that sequel was just kind of... It had none of the soul, none of the flavour. It had some merit in some ways. If that had been an entirely different film, not a sequel, maybe it would have been able to stand on its own. But as a sequel, it was just... It made no sense. And the magic of the first one, same as the magic of this, is that the story isn't answered. We don't know why the immortals were there or what purpose they had or this reward. We don't really know what the prize was about. None of that is known or acknowledged or explained. It just is. And in District 9 is the same. And I would be afraid that a sequel would try to, these days it would start at the District 9 universe.
Yes.
And my God.
Well, maybe if it did that, that would be okay. But you could totally see them bringing Christopher back and turning Wikus back, and what's really the tale? You know what I mean? When you're following on from this story. So I think we've made a concrete argument for them not making a sequel.
Yes, I know. As much as it does,
film that I wanted to do.
It does sadden my heart not to have more.
No more Wikus.
At times, you've got to let art stand on its own.
You do. So, on that arty ranking of all the films we've looked at, Surrey, let's talk a bit about our preference of how our audience should be looking at these films. We will have a special episode coming up soon, a sub-episode, I think.
Sub-episode or something?
Not counted as one of our regular episodes, where we do just sit down and maybe recap our ladders. For me, District 9 is really skyrocketing or shaking up my ladder, because I'm putting it in there at number 6 on my ladder, which comes after The Platform. How good was the platform?
The platform's great.
Talk about gross stuff.
Yeah, that was
stuff
also quite
another one. But yeah, coming straight after the platform, so it's sort of pushed down my list. Interstellar was on number 6, so it's just above Interstellar now for me. So yeah, squeezing between.
And it is hard, isn't it? Because you're still thinking,
it is. The more
should you watch District 9 before Interstellar or after Interstellar? Is there a connection that's strong enough? Should Interstellar, and this, you're sort of trying to do these things because you can't sort of say District 9 is better than Interstellar. You can't say that, but. No. But you sort of try and link them, and I found a pattern also. District 9, then Snowpiercer, then the platform, and you look at those, they do have a similar feel of
there's a bit of a cultural power.
Underdog, cultural power, a bit of grossness about food.
Seeing some similarities.
And it's just, the District 9 is the prawn, and it's just below the lobster.
Mm.
So it's definitely up there. It has to me many of the similar sort of feelings of both those movies, like The Platform and Snowpiercer, also had their very effective moments. There's that Snowpiercer, they had that axe fight in the train, which just, when I watched that the first time, it just totally blew me away. It was just reminded me of what was this Hong Kong movie? Is it Once Upon a Time in Hong Kong? Or was it Project? It's one of these ones, anyways, that this about these gangsters in Hong Kong, like Shanghai back in the day, and they fight with axes, and there's just this big hand-to-hand brawl. But yeah, definitely up there. So I've got Oblivion, Pitch Black, Lobster, District 9, Snowpiercer, Platform, rounding out that sort of that top section there. And I do see amongst them some similarities.
Yeah. And I think that's what we'll need to get into on that special episode, and maybe have a look and think about what we can see, some similarities, differences, that kind of listing out. So that's the ladder. What about the science, Surrey? What comes out of District 9 for you scientifically?
The genetic machinery and DNA as a technology.
Yeah, I love it.
It's really cool. I mean, we've had various attempts for some reason to make smart guns which don't shoot unless you are somehow allowed to shoot them, which kind of skirts around the problem of, like, they sort of say, oh, keep it out of dangerous hands, but well, what if the gun is made for the dangerous person? I don't quite understand that. But that aside,
I suppose you could see, like, children, if I have a gun in my house and it's detected to my biology, then my children can't fire it.
Yeah. And that is a concern.
That would probably be the only argument.
It'd be easier not to have a gun, right?
Yeah, that's true. Well, we just don't.
I've never needed or even thought I might like a gun.
It's not in our culture.
It's, They're lucky. I'm lucky.
Yep.
There'd be some places in the world where possibly I would move away from. But anyway.
Or it's just the norm to have a gun. Like, you just should have a gun in your house.
That aside, there's this fellow, Leonard Adleman. He is a very clever chap. He's done quite a fair bit of stuff. So he's one of the creators of the RSA encryption algorithm, which is used to secure many things. In fact, where I work, we use RSA tokens to allow people to log in as a second form of authentication. Mm-hmm. He won the 2002 Turing Award for that, which is kind of like the Nobel Prize for computer nerds.
Yep.
Which is very cool. But the exciting thing here is, in 1994, he demonstrated a proof of concept of a DNA computer.
Right.
So computer processing using DNA.
Ooh.
And the fascinating thing about this, it hints on, there's a book called The Diamond Age by Neil Stephenson. Oh, thank goodness me, I got it right. I was going to say Eric, but it's Neil Stephenson. So The Diamond Age, which sort of talks about nano machinery, and DNA is kind of a nano machinery. And the really fascinating thing about DNA as a computing instance, or I guess more generally chemistry as a computing type, is that you've got to think about everything a little bit differently. The way computing happens in an electronic computer is you have electrons flowing down wires, and where they meet in certain circuits, depending on which side has higher voltage and which side doesn't, as to what pops out the other end, and this forms binary mathematics, which can then be used to indicate actions happening. Should this pixel on the screen be red or green would depend on the combination of a bunch of little electrons, how they're hitting the thing, and will create a number. And I'm sure you've seen this, the RGB number, which is like the red, the green, the blue factor, and then the electronics produces the color.
Yes.
And that kind of all makes sense in a sense, in that it's this mathematics. But in chemical computing, so DNA computing, you don't have nice, obvious zeros and ones on and off.
Yeah.
Like an electrical flow is either flowing or it's not flowing.
Right.
So you've got to think about things in a slightly different way. And what he demonstrated in his proof of concept back in 1994 was what's known as the travelling salesman problem.
Right.
So the story goes how you've got a salesman and he has to visit 7 houses.
Right.
And the houses are connected by roads or bridges, however you want to do it. What's the most efficient way of travelling between all of these houses, crossing the roads the least number of times? So this is, it's a mathematics problem. And when you only have one house, it's really easy. There's only one solution. You go across the bridge that goes to the house. You got 2 houses. You can go from the first house to the second house. 3 houses. Do you go to the first house, then to the second house, or to the third house, then the second house?
Right. Okay.
And so you're starting to get more options. In the 4th house, now you've got 4 houses aligned. You get up to 7 houses, and there are a lot of combinations of how you could do it.
Yeah.
So in the DNA computing example, he sort of said, okay, these parts of DNA are the different roots, and they connect together, like DNA likes to zip it together type thing. So how these fragments connect together will represent different roots, and the length of the connected chains is how long they are, and so we can sieve out the longest ones and get the bottom shortest ones, and that will give us the solution. All we have to do then is assign which house each strand of this chemistry is, and then we put it in a test tube and let it react, and then sift it out and have a look at it, and it will show us the most efficient way of connecting. And it's wonderful, and it works.
Yep.
It's not very fast. It took a considerable amount of time for it to react, but the concept was there, that this idea that chemical or DNA sequences represent abstract concepts or numbers, and they react with each other differently, and that will give you your logic, which allows you to construct questions, let it react to find out what the solution is.
Okay.
And someone else, they come up with a noughts and crosses game where they had this, a 3x3 grid, and each of the 3 grid had a different molecule, concoction in it.
Yep.
And so the human player would then put their little bit of chemical dropper into each of the they go, I'm going to move in the top left-hand one. So they pick up the top left-hand little eyedropper to say, this is the chemical that represents moving to the top left-hand corner. Drop it into all 9 squares, and it reacts differently in each of the 9 squares. And they used fluorescence to indicate the square that fluoresced was the one that the computer chose to move to.
Right.
And it was programmed such that a human could never win. You could only have a draw, which is the case with noughts and crosses. So there was this little game. Again, it's quite slow. But with DNA, because it has such a large capacity for combinations, with the 4 proteins, adenosine, so it's I can't even remember now, the GATC. Yes, that's it. In fact, it reminds me of the movie Gattaca. That's how you remember. We've got to watch that sometime. It's a fantastic movie. But so just with these 4 combinations, you can end up with long bits of information.
Yep.
So there are chemicals we know will break DNA at different points, and there are then different RNAs and transcriptase and so forth which will do things. We can start putting together computers, which is sort of, again, it's different because it's the case of, okay, so here I'm going to mix up this big pile of goop.
Yep.
And then I'm going to take this pile of goop, which is my equation that I want solved. I'm going to put it in this group, and we'll sit back and I'll wait for a little bit, and then I'll sift it out and have a look at what the result is.
Yeah.
And it will have reacted. And as you can see with the noughts and crosses game, it can react in a programmed manner, showing some kind of decision making. It's a great concept. What's more interesting these days is storage of data, because of course that's what DNA does. And I think it makes more sense to use DNA not as a computer but as a storage mechanism, because everything that is needed to create a human is stored in our strands of DNA, and they're so tiny that they're sitting inside each cell. And you've got to think that in one cell of me is all the information needed to create the whole of me.
Yes.
You try and program that into a computer and store that on a hard drive somewhere, and you'd be taking up a lot of room.
Yes.
So yeah, DNA is really good for that sort of thing. So maybe that's a more useful a
DNA USB.
Yeah, but it seems in this movie the aliens have taken that sort of chemical computing, because in reality, I already know of a chemical computer that far outstrips the capabilities of any current computer, and that's our brain.
Yeah.
I mean, our brain is just a pile of chemistry.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not microchips. There's no wiring in there. That's like, you could kind of argue that neurons are a bit like wires, but they're not. As much as we've tried to model the human brain in circuitry or in computer program, we can't.
Yes.
We have this artificial intelligence neural networks. Don't worry about losing your job too soon to those things. Like they can do specific tasks that are kind of a little bit vague, better than humans, but in most things that they just can't. But we've got this chemical computer in our head. But imagine you could get to the point where you could create chemical computers that were not alive per se. They're not aware or sentient, but are able to do the sorts of artificial intelligence processing that we're capable of doing. So if the basic thing of like, here's a photograph, point out the cat.
Yes.
Or is there a cat in this picture type of thing. A human could look at it and very quickly go yes or no. And they've even got those captures. I'm sure you've done it with various times on the website. Click every square that has a number plate in it or has a lamppost.
Yeah, and the thing with humans, we're even beyond something like that, where we make, like watching a film like this, we can connotate meaning that is not even there.
Absolutely.
We read a story and we will watch a film and we get a theme out of it. There's no way that our current artificial intelligence would be able to do that.
No, but if you could construct this kind of computer more similar to a brain,
of course,
then you could end up with technology like the prawn have, spaceships able to perform amazing things with very little input.
Yeah.
Just really self-fly so very well. And this leads me, of course, to this interesting concept. The little baby, Christopher Johnson's child, for example, seemed to know how to operate this ship and turn on the suit of armour and get the beam of light going and so forth. How could he possibly know that when he would never have seen it ever?
Yes.
And you get the feeling he's quite young.
Yeah.
And this leads to genetic memory. So if we can create computers and store stuff in DNA, information in DNA, that they've stored like pictures and various codes and music in DNA.
Yeah.
Well, why is it difficult to imagine then that in our own DNA or in some other life form's DNA there could be the instructions to create a brain that just knows certain things?
Yeah, that's true.
And this is a quasi-controversial.
Yeah.
It's quasi-controversial because there are people who sort of say, no, we only have like predispositions, but everything we have to learn. But then there's people who point out the savants who go, okay, here's a 4-year-old who can play the violin like a master.
Yep.
They have not had the opportunity, and their mastery of musical language and notation and the concepts and mathematical interrelationship of notes and music, how do they know? They've never learnt that. A 4-year-old could not have learnt that.
Yeah.
So there's some sort of innate knowledge of that they're able to express. And the another one they point out is the accidental genius. So this is where you get the case where someone suffers brain trauma, and in the brain rewiring itself to work around the trauma, suddenly they can speak languages. Like they learn languages very quickly and speak them fluently with accent. Or there was a case here, where I want to talk about this one because it's quite... Oh, here we go. Okay, so Leslie Lemke is a musical virtuoso. Even though he's never had a music lesson in his life, his musical genius erupted so early and spontaneously as an infant that it could not possibly have been learnt. It came factory installed. And then there's Alonzo Clemens, this guy. He's never had an art lesson in his life. As an infant, after a head injury, he began to sculpt with whatever was handy. And now he's a celebrated sculptor who can mould a perfect specimen of any animal with clay in an hour or less after only a single glance at the animal itself. Every muscle and tendon perfectly positioned. He has had no formal training. Like that level of natural capacity, you sort of think that they're what is that? That must have been programmed in there. But the interesting implication which excites me about this and why it comes back to this film of the little child doing stuff, but also of genetic machinery or this chemical machinery, is that the implication is that this kid, Alonzo, had the capability of sculpting. Like the bang to the head didn't teach them sculpting.
No.
The bang to the head damaged a part of their brain, and the brain had to rewire around. It's very highly plastic, these brains.
Yeah.
And in doing so, it connected novel parts of its brain together, which meant he was able to translate thoughts into physical things without having to learn how to do it. Yeah, you or I would take possibly a lifetime of sculpting, and even then not be a celebrated artist. Maybe we'd be acceptable, passingly good. We could get a job doing, Wallace and Gromit cartoons, like the animation part, not to come the stories. But
that's also interesting, isn't it, that in these cases there's a head injury. It's likewise someone that maybe is on a type of drug, and because they're in that type of drug, they're in an altered consciousness. And in that altered consciousness, they do things that they wouldn't... I've seen this as well, but they wouldn't have known to do it. And in fact, I shared a little video about a guy that now he's spent like 7 years doing it, where he balances rocks.
Oh yes,
and he can the way he explains is he kind of understands like he can kind of feel gravity more than maybe you and I. But he actually says when he started he was off his face on drugs with a friend, and they went down to the river and they just started doing it because I guess his brain was not in its conscious, like he was in an altered state of consciousness, wasn't he?
Yeah, so there's this interesting concept then of genetic memory, and it quite possibly, we all have this ability to one extent or another, and maybe our process of learning allows us to connect into that. So it's not so much necessarily that it's entirely something we're learning, but rather we're learning to get in touch with it. And maybe, though, it means that if we could study it and learn it enough, perhaps we could induce this capability. Perhaps you could go along, you get a CT scan, they go, oh, okay, turns out you have the brain structures for enhanced musical capabilities. And what we'll do is we'll just apply some magnets here, give you this, drug, and...
this baseball bat,
yeah,
give you a whack.
Yeah, just a measured little tap, a little love tap with our hammer, and then bang, you go learn the piano in a day and you're the master.
I don't know how to go to the toilet anymore.
Yeah, lost the power of speech, but can play the piano like a bastard. Yeah, so I know it's very exciting, I think. And so the idea then of being able to have, like there are birds, for example, which they've raised away from all other of its species in a soundproof area, and it starts spontaneously to sing the same bird songs that the other birds of its species sing. I know they do terrible experiments out of but yeah, that's fascinating. So where did it learn how to sing that? But in the case of District 9 then, could their technology, for example, when Wikus connected into that armor suit, he started to just instinctively know how to use it. could you imagine technology that when you pick up the item, you jump in that car or that suit or whatever, and you let go of a bit of control of yourself, and then you just instinctively know how to use this thing. It just connects you. And that, I think, is a genuine possibility of this sort of chemical computing or genetic computing, which allows you to connect into these things. It excites me, the whole very notion.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Really interesting. Okay, well, that kind of brings us to the end of District 9 for tonight, folks. So let us know what you thought about what we thought about District 9. You can hit us up on Gravity Undone. That's where you can find the show and also some more information and reach out to us, or on the socials, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, pretty much Space Brains Podcast. If you look on any of those sites, you'll find our pages and you can reach out and let us know what you thought. Or just good old Google.
Yeah, so you Google us, we come up at the top.
Now, are you going to take the red pill or blue pill for episode 50?
Well, to help in the bedroom, I've been taking the blue pill.
I know you like to take your pills before we record.
But when I come here to record, it's the red pill.
Right.
Can I take a purple pill, which kind of a mix of the two, one of each?
Why not? Because episode 50 is a classic, and it's the one that we keep kind of referring back to. It's very pivotal in my science fiction viewing.
It was a moment in science fiction history, I think.
I think so. I think this film changed. I thought District 9, some people say District 9 was actually the science fiction film of this last kind of 15, 20 years. Well, I think 10 years earlier to District 9 was The Matrix. That was the thing.
The Matrix
shaped and shifted the whole industry.
It changed advertising. It changed music videos. It changed every science fiction, action, and even comedy movie. It's still doing it.
Well, yeah, and it's still doing it now, but for a good 10 years there, it probably shifted
absolutely.
Everything. And so we are talking about the mega blockbuster, The Matrix, by the Wachowski brothers / sisters. I don't really want to get that wrong.
At the time, they were the Wachowski brothers. Now I think they're just generally referred to as... There were some Wachowski sisters, but now they're just the Wachowskis in order to... I think that's their brand name now.
Yeah, it is their brand name. Yeah. And there's a big story behind that. Go Google it to find out. And go watch The Matrix and then tune in for episode 50 of Space Brains.
Where we interview the Wachowskis.
Yes.
They don't answer us back.
We just interview them.
Which is a real shame. I keep calling them.
We just literally talk to a computer screen with their pictures on it.
Yes.
That's what I want to admit. The good thing in a podcast is no camera, so apart from Surrey's little secret of camera, but
Yeah, it's the camera, but it just films me. Don't worry about it.
Okay. All right. We'll catch you later.
Bye.